Hello, everyone. How's it going today? You're listening to V Radio and stuff. Give people a little bit more time to pop in here for our conversation today. Today, I'm going to be reading from a Vice article that's extremely racist. I wish that that old what was it? It was a like a plugin on Chrome that you could put in, and it would change the words from white to black to kind of show just how racist an article might be. Um, um, we will be reading over the 100 ways that white people can make lives less frustrating for people of color, because it's an interesting article, to say the least. Interesting in that it's obnoxious. So, anyway, I see P.A.D. is in here. And it's good to see you, man. Again, man. I'll be interested to see how many people we get in here today. I shared the link everywhere. I know this is kind of an unusual time for me. It's just that my evenings are usually taken up by doing other things right now because I'm a sports coach. But we have a lot coming up here today. I'll be doing a good conversation. Give me one quick second. All right, sorry about that. I had to mute for a moment. So, in any case, how is everybody? How are you guys doing today? Blah, blah, blah. Yakety schmackety. Only one person tuned in so far, but this is again, two. This is also really early for me. I usually don't go this early in the day, but I'm gonna do this stream anyway. People can watch it later. Thanks for tuning in today. Make sure you smash that like button. Looks like I've got more likes than I have viewers. That's interesting. Hello there, Mary Jane. I haven't seen you before. It's good to meet you. Welcome to V Radio. Oh, and Lady Katie. Man, we got two ladies in here. Hello, ladies. Welcome to V Radio, where you get to listen to the velvet voice of activist journalism. Hope you guys enjoy it today. Looks like we got 6 popping in here. Maybe we'll get a little bit more. Anyway, you guys are gonna be I'm gonna be trying to work on doing some more stuff. I have a bunch of videos that I need to get together. It's just been kind of crazy and a lot of health stuff going on. Makes me depressed. And when I'm depressed, I just can't do the same level of work you guys are used to. So, but this should be fun. Oh, hello, Chevron. Hello, 60th. Oh, they're popping in here slowly but surely. Stop calling me Shirley. Trauma Mama. I like that name, Trauma Mama. Yeah, you could be Drama Mama too. Drama Mama, Trauma Mama, Llama, Bahama Mama, Llama, Drama. That's right. So, in any case, all right, that's 10 people I can start reading here. All right, so what we're going to go over is this crazy Vice article 100 ways white people can make life less frustrating for people of color. Let me blow it up here. And I'll probably take myself off the screen so you guys can see it better. I'll leave the chat up there for everyone. And I saw this. Oh, wait, if I do that, the chat log is going to come over it. That's all right. Screw it. Let's do this. You're now experiencing technical difficulties. Please stand by. Drama Mama Llama Drama. Bahama Mama Llama Drama. Starring Itty Bitty Pretty Kitties. Right? Right? Okay. So, here we go. 100 ways white people can make life less frustrating for people of color. As someone with very low tolerance for racist bullshit, I've managed to surround myself with white people who are cognizant of their privilege and strive to make the world a less terrifying and frustrating place. Terrifying. For people of color, This means that I often deal with said white people asking me what they can actually do to affect change. So here, anxious allies of the world, are 100 simple ways to be the change. It's not nearly comprehensive, but it's somewhere to start. Go forth and disrupt our harmful racial paradigm. 1. Just because you can't see racism around you doesn't mean it's not happening. Trust people of color's assessment of the situation. This is that whole listen to black people thing. I remember during the basically the witch hunt of Brett Weinstein at Evergreen State College. They were trying to reserve the right to determine what is and is not racist solely and exclusively for themselves and no one else. And when you get into that, then that allows them to determine that something is racist, even if it doesn't make any sense to call it racist. And famously, as I pointed out before, you know, when Brett was defending himself at one point from a group of them and then like got off with just a smaller group, they said, well, then why are all these people saying you're racist? They feel that you're racist. And then he kind of pointed out, he was like, he used logic to define why what he had said in his email that set everything off was not racist. And this guy said, you need to stop demanding that people use logic and reason and white forms of knowledge. That was a profound statement. And honestly, I think of the Evergreen debacle, it's probably one of the most important things because they identified, logic and reason and, all of that as quote unquote whiteness and therefore something that should not be done. Um, and that obviously doesn't make a damn bit of sense. So when they say you can't see racism around you, it doesn't mean it's not happening. Trust people of color's assessment. And the problem is that people of color are now being encouraged to see racism under every rock. As per typical when it comes to being a witch hunt, if you haven't found any evidence of it, then that just means you haven't looked hard enough yet. And things get labeled racist all the time that are not even remotely racist. So no, I'm not just going to trust people of color inherently. And the other funny thing about this is that when it says trust people of color's, assessment of a situation, it comes back to listen to black people exclusively on this topic is that they will revoke that at any moment. If say Candace Owens says that's not racist, right? You know, um, hey there, Matthew, it's good to see you. So they want to exclusively have the right to try to play the black card, so to speak, to be able to say, well, I'm black and therefore I say it's racist and therefore it is. But then they want to be able to revoke that at any moment that somebody, says something is not racist and doesn't agree with them. And that just isn't going to jive. It's not going to happen. Now, number 2, don't assume that all people of color share the same views. We are not a monolith. I agree. That goes back to what we just talked about. The problem is that they do want white people to be a monolith. They do want white people to have collective punishment and collective guilt for anything that any white person has ever done. And it's a logic that just doesn't make any sense. It's never improved any situation. But basically, so don't assume that all people of color share the same views. We are not a monolith. I agree. How about don't assume that all people, who happen to be Caucasian share the same views because we are also not a monolith. Don't assume or guess people's races. This is not a fun game for us. This is another thing that just kind of got demonized. Like, I used to just ask people what their ethnic backgrounds were because I was curious, because I find other cultures fascinating and interesting, and they've turned that into a racist thing. Again, they want to be able to define what racism is at any given moment. It's just like, for example, saying, well, you having black friends doesn't mean you're not racist. No racist person would have black friends, at least not a white racist person, right? They wouldn't. That's the whole point. Why would they ever talk to them? Go hang out with real racists. They don't have black friends. And that's why they need this sort of thing defeated as fast as possible, because it's the most obvious evidence that they're wrong. And we're going to get into that more as we kind of go here. But, if someone tells you they're from Uganda, don't say, I went to Nigeria once. Just please. Why is this a problem? Why is this a problem? How is this racism? How does this hurt you? Please show us on the doll where adding to the conversation that you went to a different African country hurt you. Like, this is an example of what this kind of like critical race theory, race consciousness stuff does to you. And no, I'm not just quoting willy-nilly. I went over this. Race consciousness is a pinnacle of critical race theory, and it's basically the belief that Black people should be completely aware of race at absolutely every moment. And that's what leads to this kind of thinking. You're literally just walking through life trying to figure out how somebody of the hated race has offended you today. You know, and if that, assessment that you're supposedly racist, is um if you don't go along with it, well, then obviously, you must be racist. You're just supposed to go along with it because you're supposed to believe people of color or listen to them in the situation, unless they're Candace Owens. Um, Related, don't refer to Africa as a country. It's a continent and it's wildly varied. Yes, take a moment. Well, right. That's also why not all people of color are directly descended from the kings and queens of Egypt or whatever other new thing that they've brought about. Some are, some are not. You know, um, yeah. How about don't refer to Europe as a country, or don't refer to any place where large quantities of white people dwell as like anyway, it doesn't matter. Oh, this is number 6. And rest assured that literally no person of color ever wants you to get back from holiday, show off your tan, and excitedly exclaim, "Look, I'm almost as dark as you." Cease and desist. I, I do not believe this has ever happened. Nobody would ever fucking do this. I mean, this is seriously ridiculous. Like, nobody ever comes back from their fucking vacation and tells a Black person that they're almost as dark as them. There's no way. That's just ridiculous. I just don't believe that for a second. I'm calling them out. I mean, I honestly, I wish I could be like locked in a room with people when they say stuff like this sometimes, because I would anyway. Then we have this. Don't assume that a person of color knows everything about their country of heritage. Do you know everything there is to know about America, Germany, Sweden? That's what I thought. What the hell is this? You wrote an article in Vice, got published somehow, and you think that this is what's going on? I've literally never seen this conversation take place ever in my entire life, and the majority of my life has been spent in predominantly Black neighborhoods. I have never once ever had this conversation. Don't assume that a person of color knows everything about their country of heritage. Do you know everything there is to know? Like, what is this? So you can make life, what was let's go back to the title, less frustrating for people of color. I'm so frustrated because people assumed I would know everything about my African heritage. No, this is not a thing. You are not victimized by this. This is just stupid. Number 8, don't assume we can run if we're Black, do math if we're Asians, or have drinking problems if we're indigenous. Okay. How about don't assume we're racist if we're white? Would that be okay? Could we do that? Right? Oh, and I love number 9. Regard us as autonomous, unique individuals, not as representatives of our race. So people of color can be unique individuals, not as representatives of their race, but white people can make their lives less frustrating. This has always been the problem. And I remember actually there was a racist college professor quote that I reviewed the video about. We can actually take a second and watch that video that's relevant to this. But it's just that he was literally a racist professor teaching people that white people will refer to themselves as individuals as a strategy, like to get themselves out of this, collective guilt for everything. And, you know, that's an example of what I mean. They really do want white people to be a monolith, and they want themselves to be subject. Well, that's what those people thought. That's what those individuals thought. Or, it's not right to judge anybody collectively, unless they happen to be white. They don't want to have any kind of, actual, they don't want to have a situation basically where we are allowed to be individuals. We are collectively guilty. We are to be collectively punished for anything that anyone else who happened to have our skin color may have done. But if actual racists, like say the KKK, bring up the crime statistics, then they want to say, but we're individuals, right? And it's one of the reasons why this whole logic just falls in on itself. Another project I'm working on right now is a video where I'm going to talk about how it seems like the current left, that the ideology has been designed to just induce madness, because you can't possibly believe these things at the same time. You can't. Like, there's so many stupid contradictions, that came out of this, because, in order to be able to believe what they believe, you'd have to be willing to simultaneously hold views that are completely contradictory. And that's why I said it's the path to madness. It doesn't make any sense. Let me go ahead and play this video of mine from a while ago. This guy, still interact with him on Twitter sometimes. But we'll have a look at it. 1 second. Okay, yeah, it's up. I just wanted to be sure.
So for a while now, I've been pointing to the fact that there seems to be an effort to just simply invert what racial activists believe to be the hierarchy. They want separate sets of rules for themselves and to essentially establish black privilege. I've also commented on the fact that science shows that the act of doing this actually causes more bigotry and racism. I've discussed this kind of rise of rhetoric along the lines of white people are collectively this or collectively that white people are responsible for this or responsible for that. I went over that quite a bit in my series about everything's going to be all white. And I'm still going to do more of that. I actually have plenty to do with it. I just hadn't finished it. I can only take so much of watching that kind of content. But I stumbled on this on Twitter, and I decided I wanted to address it because it's somebody saying the quiet part out loud. I wanted to address that. This college professor was caught on video saying exactly what it is that this particular video is what I am attempting to address. And that is this need to suggest that white people are a collective monolith and therefore equally, collectively guilty for any and everything that they have deemed that white people are guilty of. Let's take a look.
Do serious justice work, and it's a strategy. It's a strategy to pretend that like all white people are individuals.
It's a strategy to pretend that all white people are individuals. So white people are not actually individuals, but it's a strategy to pretend that all white people are individuals. That's really what has been something they've just been slowly trying to socially engineer into society for quite some time, which is why you see all this anti-white rhetoric. The purpose of it is in the same way that the Nazis, picked the Jews out and demonized them and made them collectively on the hook for everything bad about Germany. People of color have been manipulated into doing the same thing, only to white people. If we want to say maybe perhaps that this was taken out of context, unfortunately this video does not have very good quality because it was caught on a phone in a situation where I don't even know if this guy necessarily knew he was being recorded. But I did get more of his tweets that confirmed that yes, this is exactly what he means. White people are not individuals. Let's take a look. The whites. Don't group us. We are individuals. Hirami, that's the name of this guy. Well, but you individually make yourselves into the same variety of whites, and that's not great for black communities. These are individuals, too, but that's irrelevant if your goal is to avoid getting stung. So, in other words, no. White people are not individuals. That's a strategy to suggest that we should be judged individually. And I replied, the KKK groups black people as criminals due to FBI crime statistics showing a clear pattern. Is that wrong? I would say it's wrong because grouping all people of a race and suggesting that race is a determinant of human traits is, well, racism. Definition of racism, meaning the actual one, not the one that they're attempting to lie into being by repeating the lie over and over again, but different video, I've already covered that topic. A belief that race is a fundamental determinant of human traits and capacities, and that racial differences produce an inherent superiority of a particular race. The idea that you can just put together, a suggestion that race is a fundamental determinant of human traits. In other words, white people do this, white people do that, is racism. In the same way that black people do this and black people do that, is racism. Further along into the same argument, each has individually made themselves into a recognizable group. This is still talking about white people. I'm from California, and it's kind of like the way a good number of people, through their individual efforts, have the same nose as Nicole Kidman. And I said, when people individually make themselves into a recognizable group. So racists would say that's a thing. Like when the KKK says that you are not human because statistics show a recognizable group. This is wrong because it's racist to draw such parallels. And I quote the crime statistics that show an overwhelming propensity for violent crime from one specific racial demographic. It would be racist to suggest that this is inherent behavior or something that all black people are collectively, responsible for, because they're not. That would be racist. So why is it acceptable to suggest that all white people collectively are responsible for something? It's not. It's still racism. Here's some more lovely quotes from this professor. I've been telling you for a while that unless you deal with the white family and the white church, your politics is going to get run over. Again, the suggestion that race is the fundamental determinant of human traits is racism. Folks underestimate the tax that comes with dealing with a room full of white women about schools. And make no mistake, they are like mosquitoes. 3 or 4 in a room of 20 is already a room full of them. Or maybe it's more like a skunk, where all you need is one in order to conform the whole room into being terrified it's going to spray. So again, just openly talk with hate about white people. Because this man believes that race is a fundamental determinant of human traits. He's a racist. The funny thing is, this man is paid to be a professor to teach people this nonsense. And he is now teaching students that white people are not individuals, that they are a collective monolith responsible for anything and everything done by anybody else with a similar color of skin. And at the same time, he's telling his students that black people are not subject to the same scrutiny. Black people can commit any number of things, and they are not collectively black people. I agree with the second part. I don't agree with the first part. The rules that govern what is and is not racism and bigotry do not just magically change. Despite any attempts at them trying to claim that the definition requires power on the part of the person who holds the belief, it's still just a belief. Period. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in, guys.
So yeah, that was a video I did on that topic because I stumbled on that video, and it's relevant to this because when I say that there is an actual effort being done on the level of education to specifically try to suggest to people that white people are a monolith, that we should be held in, because everybody's talking about collective guilt, especially when they're discussing this whole Palestinian issue. Everybody's talking about collective punishment, right? And they always say that it's fine. In fact, there's another argument right now going on about whether or not black people can be racist on Facebook that I was taking part in. And I'm sure that that's going to come up in this ridiculous list. So let's get back to the Vice article. So anyway, thanks for tuning in. Anybody who's just recently joined us, we're going to be reviewing this article by Vice, wherein that they discuss that there are 100 ways that white people can become or be less make life less frustrating for people of color. But anyway, so that was regard us as autonomous, unique individuals, not as representatives of our race. And the conflict here is that they do, however, feel that white people should be held as a collective monolith. And this is what the problem is. That this is when it's obvious that it's racism. Anyway, number 10, don't make embarrassing jokes to try to be down with people of color. We'll laugh at you, not with you. Oh, okay. Have you ever noticed that there's really no way to interact with these people who are infected with this critical race theory way of thinking? And that's what I mean by these people. Um, if you're white, there's no way to interact with them positively. If you move out of a place, then it's white flight. If you move into a place, then it's gentrification. There is no acceptable way to exist while being white. That is why this is becoming a supremacist ideology and why it's leading to very dangerous, events. I mean, we just had 3 mass shootings recently by people saying they wanted to target white people with white privilege, and meanwhile, they'll suggest, like I remember Brianna Joy Gray from The Hill trying to blame Jordan Peterson's rhetoric for the stabbing of a teacher at a gender studies, thing. It's like it's always about any rhetoric they don't agree with is dangerous rhetoric that might lead to violence, but their own rhetoric is, of course, never going to lead to violence. It's just stupid. Anyway. Number 11, don't rinse our culturally specific memes. They're ours. Go enjoy that weird one about the plums. I don't know what she's talking about plums, but this issue that they think that things belong to them only. I'm just so past this stuff. Like, it's crazy because, again, it never applies in both directions. There's an article that you can read where a girl engaged in Irish river dance and she actually competes in it. And then they try to, of course, say that somehow that's not cultural appropriation. The rules never apply to them. They only apply to you if you happen to be straight, white, male, cis, whatever, right? And that's why it's just not logically consistent. That's why I said it seems like the current left the ideology is literally designed to fall in on itself. It's like a house that was built specifically to fall down, Number 12, if you're at my house party, don't turn off the weekend. I don't know if that's a thing, to put on Arctic Monkeys. Okay, this one is very specific, but it happened to me once and I'm not over it. The audacity of a white person to change my music. Okay, whatever. Now, this one, I already kind of touched on this. I actually plan on doing a video about this at some point, but avoid phrases, this number 13, like, but I have a black friend, I can't be racist. That's BS as well as we do. The reason that they always needed to go after this is because it's the most obvious, blatant example that someone is not racist. If you interact with the KKK, they don't have black friends. Neo-Nazis do not have black friends. Actual racists do not have black friends. It's that simple. It is the most obvious example that somebody actually does not hate black people, is not prejudiced against black people or whatever, right? That's why they need this to immediately be discredited, or even to say that you have a black friend is somehow a racist statement in of itself, because it's the most obvious proof that somebody does not have, racist tendencies. I remember once being accused of being racist, and I showed a picture of my son with the wrestling team that we drive like an hour and a half out of our way to go be part of, where he's literally the only white kid in the picture because he is the only white kid on that team. And they would, of course, say, well, you're just saying you're not racist because you have black friends. I'm like, no, I'm saying that if I were a racist, I would not drive an hour out of my way to take my kid to a team where he's the only white kid. In fact, I would never do that. But again, you have to remember, they want to be able to call you racist at any given moment. They want it to be able to be something that they can wield against you no matter what's going on. Like, I got told to check my white privilege once, ironically, by a white woman because she was losing an argument on Facebook. This is very common. Check your privilege used to get way out of control. So much to the point that even the woke themselves would say it was out of control. So, but anyway, the reason that they need, but I have a black friend, I can't be racist, to not be valid is that there are plenty of people who are white, who are not racist, that they want to be able to guilt into and emotionally control, that are obviously not racist. Number 14, when you endlessly complain about how terrible white people are, you are being that terrible white person. Jeez. So, what the fuck? This is why I said there is no acceptable way to be white to them. There's no acceptable way for us to exist. This is why this starts to look, sound, and feel exactly like the Nazis demonizing Jews. This is exactly what it looks like. It's a slow burn, because this is where it heads. So you can't even acknowledge that there are bad white people, because that also makes you a bad white person. How are you supposed to behave that they will ever be that they'll ever accept you, right? Number 15. Don't say shit like, I know what it's like to be a person of color. I'm a ginger. Who the fuck ever said that? Nobody ever said this. Again, I just can't. Like who the fuck do they think said that redheads were people of color? Like, they say stuff like this, like they actually believe that there are people out there that think that this is a valid argument. It's just not. Oh, I'm seeing here. This is kind of funny. White people appropriated Greco-Roman wrestling from black culture. That's a funny one because I encounter that nonsense all the time. I'm on some forums just to watch them, how they are coming out with new black supremacist theories about how they supposedly invented everything. And there are really cool indigenous African martial arts. I actually looked into them because I found out, ironically, I have an ancestor from Senegal, meaning, yes, I have black ancestry. And so as soon as I found that out, I thought that was really cool. So I wanted to go investigate, the Senegalese culture and try to learn about it. And they have wrestling as their primary sport. But yeah, they honestly just want to claim everything at this point. And that's when it stops being about equality, not that it has been for a while, and becomes a supremacist ideology. And I've been warning about this for a long time. And they really, 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 they need to believe this. And that's why I said it's switching from, it's not just that we're not just as good as white people, it's that we are superior to white people. Like, you guys may have watched one of my videos where I read a comment from a Black Lives Matter organizer from Ontario, where she literally declares that whiteness is not humanness, that white people are a genetic defect, right? That is the evolution of this. This is the reason why my mentor, Jacques Fresco, did not approve of quote unquote specific group grievance activism, because inevitably you go from being an activist for your selected group that you identify with to suddenly becoming a supremacist from, without really realizing it. And it's not just racial activism. Feminism is the same way. You watch feminists go from like, well, we just want to be treated equally, to, no, it's fine that men are mistreated in the family court, but we also want all of these other things for ourselves. It's just better that we try to work to elevate humanity as a whole, all at once. Like if we fill the aquarium full of flotation objects up with water, they're all gonna come up and rise simultaneously, right? It's a weird analogy, I know, but hey, I haven't had my caffeine today, but I think you get the concept. So anyway, oh, here we go. Don't question someone's blackness. This is number 16. If they're light-skinned, it's not your place. Other black people can make sure that light-skinned black people are cognizant of their privilege. Wow. And so don't forget, Candace Owens is plenty dark, but they don't consider her black. There are plenty of other examples of black people that don't fit into this mold, because what they really want it to be about is like, being black is a religion almost in of itself, and you can commit blasphemy against it and therefore be a heretic and be excommunicated. But anyway, don't question someone's blackness if they're light skinned. It's not your place. other black people can make sure that light-skinned black people are cognizant of their privilege. Now we're getting into racial purity, essentially. And that's one of the other things that I noticed was that, and I've mentioned this many times on my stream, but it just feels like whomever is running all of this must be diabolically racist, because they're trying to bring back stigmas, for example, against racial marriage. They don't want white people to adopt black kids. They don't want white people to marry black people. It's crazy, because it's like they're systematically undoing every benefit of the civil rights movement, one thing at a time. But somebody has convinced black activists that the best way for them to be free would be to resegregate themselves, burn down their own cities, and destroy their own economies, never intermarry. It literally feels like some really diabolical racist infiltrated this movement and convinced them that the best way for them to be free is to undo the civil rights movement. How about you don't fucking identify people by the color of their skin? How about you don't judge people by the color of their skin? That would be fantastic. And that brings us to 17. Never try to tell a person of color what is or isn't racist. They want to be the appointed clergy of this religion. You cannot argue with them about what is and is not racist. They're allowed to define it any way they want, anyhow they want, and you're just supposed to go along with it. And if you don't just obey and listen to whatever they say, like I mentioned in that video I played for you earlier, it's like they want to create a black privilege. And the black privilege will be that they are allowed to identify anything as racist, and you better go along with it. They are allowed to decide that anybody is a witch. They are the appointed witch hunters. And if you don't go along with them, it probably means you're also a witch. Right? It's just stupid. But again, never try to tell a person of color what is or isn't racist. This, again, I'm going to go back to the Candace Owens, Thomas Sowell. There's plenty of other black activists who don't agree with all this nonsense. Some, a lot of them are on the right, but some of them are also on the left, and they're not on board. You don't get some special privilege to define what is and is not something just because you happen to have a certain level of melanin in your skin. So anyway, moving on. Number 18, when you find instances of racist bullshit online, please don't send it to us. We know racism exists. Thanks. I'm not even really sure why she felt this needed to be put on here, but it's like, it comes back to, again, white people can't call out racism or it's racist. They can't fight racism or it's racist, but they better fight it or they're racist. Like, this is a supremacist ideology. This is what leads to genocides, is when you have reason to yourself that a certain group of people cannot exist without being evil, and there is no way for them to ever redeem themselves. Well, what does that lead to? That leads to gas chambers. That leads to a final solution, right? And before people think that that's just crazy, actually, I'll bring this video up while I'm doing this. But there's a video of a professor literally just laying that out, and anyway, all of this stuff together just makes for it's just that, again, is just going to lead to an evil ideology. But this has been going on for a while. So let me show you guys something that I have up on my BitChute, because when I uploaded it by itself, it often gets deleted. So, but here's an example of what I mean. This isn't just some crazy thing. This guy was a professor.
Now, how do I know that the white people know that we are going to come up with a solution to the problem? I know it because they have retina scans, they have what they call racial profiling, DNA banks, and they're monitoring our people to try to prevent the one person from coming up with the one idea. And the one idea is, how we are going to exterminate white people, because that, in my estimation, is the only conclusion I have come to. We have to exterminate white people off of the face of the planet to solve this problem. Now, I don't care whether you clap or not, but I'm saying to you that we need to solve this problem because they are going to kill us. And I will leave on that. So we have to just set up our own system and stop playing and get very serious and not be diverted from coming up with a solution to the problem. And the problem on the planet is white people.
See all the people clapping for that shit?
Be hard to follow that one.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to follow that, right? Because he sounds like Hitler. And that was on fucking C-SPAN. It's still there. Like, you can grab the original if you go back to that link. That was like after Hurricane Katrina. They brought that guy on. He actually had given a much longer speech than that, you know. But again, that's just the final solution to the white question. It's literally Nazi thinking, and people clapping for it. And he's a professor, and then there are more professors like him, you know. And if you guys remember the video I did about critical race theory, that was a review on The Root. That's the other thing, is like they're always telling you, if you want to learn about critical race theory, turn off Fox News. You know, don't be involved in any of that. You have to come to us and we'll explain it to you or whatever. You know, but it was a video on The Root, and The Root is like a Black Issues network. It's like the BET of YouTube, right? And they brought on a woman who just flat out said, my instinct is we need to take these motherfuckers out. Like, legitimately talking about killing all white people. And that they were taking time to explain what critical race theory is and it isn't. You know. Anyway, moving on. Number 19, read something already written about it, rather than coming to your friends and acquaintances of color, looking for hot takes on anything and everything appropriative a Kardashian Miley Cyrus does. We don't want to think about this shit 24/7. So I guess you're not supposed to tell people of color that they saw, you know, something that they consider to be cultural appropriation. You know, what's funny about cultural appropriation, when you go to Africa, they listen to country music. Like, legit. They dress country, look country. They sing like Dolly Parton and old country music. They've totally adopted that culture. And an African explained to me that the reason why is that country music appeals to them more because the majority over in Black Africa, at least in the country in question, they're all conservative Christians because they have more in common with people talking about trucks and cows than they do, you know, with some kind of, you know, ghetto violent music. You know, people in Africa think that this cultural appropriation shit is nonsense. You know, the actual supposedly most oppressed Black people on earth think that this is all nonsense. They also, Black Africans who come over here, have a tendency to do extremely well because they're very hardworking people. Like, just like any other immigrants, they appreciate what they get when they come over here. And somehow that magical systemic racism doesn't seem to hold back African immigrants, but does somehow hold back people who are Black who came here. You know, I don't know. I guess it's not a smart bomb. You know, anyway, moving on to 20. Just want to try to get through these because I can't be here all day today. Understand that some days are even more mentally exhausting for people of color thanks to the news cycle. Try not to badger us for our opinions on the latest atrocity that has occurred. Leave us to grieve. Wow. Oh, but when we do have something to say about it, listen. Because again, you have to listen to us, and we are always right because we are Black. Share articles relating to the everyday experiences of race and racism written by people of color. But 23, it's like she's making more of them by just like elaborating on the same point. But don't be that person who is weird and psychophonic and loves to demonstrate their wokeness constantly to the people of color around them. Be thoughtful. So you better be woke, but don't be woke. Remember what I said earlier. There is no space for you. You can't exist. You can't be redeemed, right? Number 24, read books by people of color. I recommend Sister Outsider by Audre Lorde, The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander, and literally everything that Junot Diaz writes for great insights into Blackness. What about Thomas Sowell? What about Candace Owens, the greatest lie ever told? Is it only specific people of color? I guarantee you, if I was talking to this author in person, that is exactly what they would say. That she only means specific people of color, not all people of color. Number 25, watch shows that are created by people of color. In other words, Atlanta or Insecure. Seriously, if you haven't seen Atlanta, you need to watch it now. What about Everything's Gonna Be All White? I did 2 videos going after that show because it was absolutely atrocious. Thankfully, it got some really bad reviews. Anyway, number 26, have a critical eye when watching TV movies and movies. How are they portraying people of color and why? What purpose does it serve? This is trying to, invoke race consciousness. Like that you need to go into every movie and analyze it from that perspective. The funny thing is that the most of what I have seen is that I remember, because I was living in the ghetto when the Cosby Show was out, was that a lot of people of color around me said that they didn't like it because they didn't feel people of color would ever act like those people because they were basically an upper middle class family, and then they would blame the ghetto culture on the negative portrayal of Black people in movies, when the reality is those movies were made to be a reflection of what was actually taking place in the predominantly Black communities that I lived in at the time. Like movies like Boys in the Hood, all of those were fairly accurate portrayals of what it's like to live in those places. That's what NWA music was about. Straight Outta Compton and all that. It's a reflection of what was actually going on. And that culture perpetuates itself there, and they don't do anything to fight that. Number 27, if you go to an art gallery, notice how many works are by people of color. If it's lacking, make some noise. Send an email. Query the curator. White people shouldn't have a monopoly on what can be considered art. So again, you need to go analyze everything with race consciousness. Number 28, if a character you assumed was white in a book is portrayed by an actor of color in the movie, embrace it. Whiteness is not the default. And this comes back to the whole race swapping thing that they keep doing. And honestly, the problems come about when they do it in a way that is just blatantly stupid and pandering. So for example, I love the new Equalizer films, and Denzel Washington is my favorite actor, period. The original Equalizer was like a British old guy. Nobody complained about it because Denzel Washington didn't smear in everybody's face that he was a Black guy, like a dog that you're trying to teach not to poop in the house, right? He didn't smear it in everybody's faces. He just went and did an awesome fucking job. I basically love every movie that guy's ever done. But the reason that this whole thing doesn't make any sense is that they don't like it in the other direction at all. And it's really important that this hypocrisy is called out, because it's another example of just brain rot. If Idris Elba ever got appointed to be James Bond, I think he would do fine. There's not a specific thing about Bond needing to be white. He just needs to be British, right? There are a lot of other great examples of how to do this correctly. So like Benjamin Sisko is probably my favorite Star Trek character as far as captains anyway. Lieutenant Worf, a lot of people love Lieutenant Worf, portrayed by Michael Dorn. Unfortunately, Fear the Walking Dead has gotten a little messed up, but my favorite character in Walking Dead was Morgan for a really long time. Or we could go back to Independence Day. That movie made Will Smith's career, right? And he made that movie. It's just do it well, and then nobody will care. But don't do it badly, and then insist that the only reason people don't like it is because they're racist somehow. Independence Day broke Star Wars' record at one point. It was such a high-grossing movie. So, and the main character was Will Smith in a role that was just fantastic. So why is it then that Independence Day could gross so much with a male Black lead, yet for some reason these other movies fail, right? Or they'll say things like, you didn't like the new Marvel movie because the character was this or that. But the Blade movies were widely loved. Like Wesley Snipes' Blade movies were all Marvel movies, guys, and they were all excellent. I love that character. The new actor I hope they don't ruin it, because she's got big shoes to fill. I love that, like the line where he goes, "Motherfuckers always got to try to ice skate uphill." But the problematic, I'm going to use their word, portrayal of people of color in cinema that bothers me would be the video that I did about how they tried to frame that Killmonger, the villain from the Black Panther film, is actually somehow the hero of the film. I'm not even making that up. And it wasn't just fringe people who said that. It was literally the actor himself said that T'Challa was somehow not a villain. Probably one of my more underrated videos, but if you haven't checked that out, it's really disturbing to watch how they tried to deify this character. So anyway, moving on. Support plays written by and acted in by people of color. The world of theater is overwhelmingly white. Anybody can go be part of theater. Whatever. I'll support anything that's good. So just stop writing crap and then expecting us to like it, because otherwise we're whatever label you want to throw on us today. Refuse to go to club nights or drag shows or burlesque nights that use culturally appropriated acts. Oh my God. So cultural appropriation is such a fucking nothing burger. It really is. When you're so not victimized that you have to invent victimization, like it hurts you somehow if a white person has dreadlocks. It hurts you somehow. Again, these are the kinds of examples of them just kind of inventing ways to make themselves into victims. Like if this is the worst thing you got, oh look, it's Winning Reality. Hey, Winning Reality, what's up? I don't. If this is your oppression, this is the voice of your oppression, I think you have bigger problems. This one I don't understand. Although I don't mind it, but this is another example of why I think that the racial characters thing is so stupid. So I remember when Black Panther came out, I remember seeing this kid at a McDonald's play place. He was wearing the Black Panther mask, carrying a Black Panther action figure, and he happened to be a white kid. He didn't care that Black Panther is black. So why is it that they need to be represented all the time in order to be able to identify with characters? Who identifies as Groot? Is he there for plant representation? What about Rocket Raccoon? Does he exist to be sure that raccoons feel represented in cinema? A lot of people love Rocket Raccoon. He's not a white dude. He's a raccoon, right? Anyway. Support crowdfunding campaigns for cultural products created by people of color if you can. Yeah, if it's a good product, that would be great. There's a new comic book that somebody's putting together that's actually based on real African mythology. And I'm actually looking forward to it. I think it'll be really cool. Because that would do a lot more, first of all, to help black children than, say, making black mermaids. Donate money to grassroots movements around you that are run by and support people of color. Obviously, they need to buy more mansions. Support small businesses owned by people of color. One of my favorite rib places ever is owned by a black guy. But I didn't go there because he was black. I went there because he makes good ribs. Number 35, if you're upper or middle class, try to avoid moving into an area that has historically been populated by low-income people of color. Gentrification tears communities apart. So again, there's no way to properly exist. If we leave, it's white flight. If we move in, it's gentrification. Just try not to move into places that have been historically populated by low-income people of color. The gentrification is kind of a goofy situation, to be honest with you. I don't know what they want. Like, they want people to invest in their communities that they burn down regularly and reserve the right to burn down. And then if you don't like it, you're putting people before property. And then if you won't go and invest in their communities that they burn down whenever they feel like it, even if you have nothing to do with whatever it is that they're burning buildings down for, then you're racist. You have to go invest in their communities, allow them to burn them down, allow them to be crime ridden. And if you don't do that, well, then you're racist. That's what they're trying to say now. It's like when they talk about the grocery, like the food deserts where there's no stores open and, in wide swaths. And to the credit of people of color, actual justice warriors doing a great job right now of exposing the fact that people of color in those communities are finally getting sick of it and doing something about it, because these stores closed down because of theft. You're not entitled for people to invest in your community. If you don't like it, then do something to make your community investable. I guarantee you they will be there. Don't assume, number 36, people of color can't speak English. Oh, okay. Like, what is this about? Is that something just exclusive to them? Because I meet Albanians who don't speak very good English. Anyway, whatever. So many of these are just trite. They're just not important. But also be patient if our English isn't perfect. Are you multilingual? Probably not. It's hard. Okay. In general, don't assume we want to be white or want to assimilate, and don't pressure us to do so. I have never in my life ever heard or seen anyone suggest that a person wanted to be white, other than another example of parody becoming reality. But it's that funny moment from the Clerk. It wasn't Clerks. It was Chasing Amy. And, at one point they do a parody because there's this black guy who basically is making blaxploitation comic books. And at one point he says, like, Darth Vader is racist. It just shows that a guy takes off his helmet and he's a white guy, is that we secretly all want to be white people underneath or whatever. And then the character that's helping him with the joke says, "Isn't that true?" And then he pulls out a fake gun and shoots him. Like, the whole thing was meant to be a parody, essentially, to kind of get attention for the guy's comic book. But anyway, the thing about assimilation is this is a direct reference, again, to critical race theory, that they believe that assimilation and integration is genocide, and that therefore they should remain segregated in what they call black culture. They can't really define what that is because it's not African, not generally. Number 39, recognize that you can't assume someone's religion based on how they look. Not all South Asians and Middle Eastern people are Muslims, and not all black people are Christian. Not all East Asian people are Buddhist. You get the idea. Okay, fine. Again, I don't... What is this about? This is your oppression? People might assume that you could be, from a Black Baptist church or something. How did this hurt you? Anyway. Number 40, remember that not all people of color are straight. Right. Okay. Which brings us to number 41. Remember that people of color are not inherently more homophobic than white people. So now we get into statistics, that thing that they love if they're demonizing white people, but not the other way around. Because I was reading about that and I was like, why would they ever say something like that? Like, what would make them feel compelled? Well, it just so happens that studies actually show the persistence of racial differences and attitudes toward homosexuality in the United States. That literally statistics show, that stigma may mediate some of the observed disparity in HIV infection rates between African American white men who have sex with men, etc. But there's multiple studies here. The proportion of African Americans who indicated that homosexuality was always wrong was 72.3% in 2008. In contrast, among white respondents, this figure declined from 70 to 51% in 2008. So in other words, no, you're wrong. Statistically speaking, there are more black people that are homophobic than white people. Period. This is just the truth. This is not a matter of opinion. But she's going to lie and just openly claim, remember that, people of color are not inherently more homophobic than white people. Again, it's just fiction. She's just making shit up. And I would agree, Vice has fallen really freaking far. Although there is an interesting Vice article that I frequently share with people that it's the case for more police. It's an anti-defund the police article that's still sitting on Vice. Number 42, people can be black and gay and disabled and trans and middle class. Blackness is expansive. It doesn't look one way. Keep this in mind. Okay. The only time I've ever seen this come up was when we're at Occupy and they start labeling various oppression labels on themselves to be able to get more privilege. When we talk about race, we're not just talking about men. Repeat after me. Intersections of race and gender exist. Well, that's funny that you mentioned that, because I seem to recall reading an article that was on the route that stated straight black men are the white people of black people. I wish I was making this up, because one of the things I pointed out about the wokeness is that it's never satisfied. They turn on each other very quickly. When they've managed to chase all of the straight white conservative men out of their circles, they are quick to look for the next group that needs to be listed as the oppressor. It never ends, because they're always trying to tear a group down to everyone else's perceived level. They're never trying to raise everyone up. Number 44, remember that it is black women and Native women and mixed race women who are most likely to be raped in their lifetimes in America. You cannot be an advocate against sexual violence without considering the impact of race. I would think the majority of this is going to have to do with the crime in their communities. I don't think this really requires special attention. You know, it's not that people are saying, oh, there's a black girl. I far more prefer to rape black women. You know, that isn't what's going on. Anyway, don't ask black women if it's our real hair, and don't judge black women for wearing wigs or weaves or having relaxers. Nobody cares. I don't care. This is not important to anyone other than you. And then this one, 46, please don't touch our fucking hair. Who does this? Who does this? I have never seen this take place. Who just walks up to a random black person and touches their hair? There used to be videos circulating kind of calling this out, that this was racist behavior. So apparently, I hate your race so much that I am fascinated by and want to touch your hair. I hate you so much that I admire your hair. It just doesn't make any sense. Nobody does this. Oh, here we go. If you have a black girlfriend, please make sure that your shower is always adequately stocked with conditioner. Never that 2-in-1 stuff. We beg you. So you're racist if you don't have good conditioner and you have a black girlfriend. 48, never try and pull any uninvited race play shit in the bedroom. Seriously, what the fuck? What are you talking about? Like, has she been in the bedroom with somebody who tried to bring in race? What? Anyway, number 49, actively try to identify and unsubscribe from Orientalist tropes, believing that East Asian women are naturally more submissive or docile. People of color are people, not characters. Okay, I don't do this. Who does this? Anyway, number 50. If you call a woman of color exotic, you deserve a stub to stub your toe every day for a year. Do not do this. Why? Why? This is a compliment. This is a compliment. Who cares? Now, number 51 is another example of like these mythical characters that they create for themselves. Also saying, I've never fucked a black, Asian, Native person to someone you're trying to hook up with is a one-way ticket to hell. Who would do this? Like, nobody would ever seriously do this. This is absolutely ridiculous. Like, you'd have to be like a Cro-Magnon troglodyte, right? You know, there's no freaking way. Number 52 is if you have any such fetishistic thoughts, please don't ever bother coming near a person of color. Sure. Number 53, remember that having mixed race children is not a cure for racism or a way to live out weird racial fantasies. So these come back to the whole thing of like, you cannot exist as as white. There is no way for you to not be racist, even if you happen to be married to, love a black person, adopt a black person. There's no correct way for you to interact with black people, positive or negative. And they reserve the right to change what it is that is good and bad at any moment. And it's usually going to be something that is weighed against you when they want power over you. That's really all that's at play here. Here we go. If you're trying to start a mixed race family, sit down and deeply interrogate your intentions. What the fuck is this? Interrogate your intentions? What if my intentions is to have children with the person I love? So the non-racist position would be for you, who's happily married to a person of color, to carefully and deeply interrogate your intentions. This is what I said about how they're undoing the civil rights movement one step at a time. If you're trying to start a mixed race family, sit down and deeply interrogate your intentions. And then elaborating, if you do have mixed race children, make sure that they have access to people who look like them and who understand their experiences. This whole thing of people who look like them is a huge problem. Like, that's why, like, we need to have people who look like us. Why are we so fixated on how people look? Racists do that. Why can't we all just be humans? Does the black Labrador that's friends with the, chocolate lab or whatever feel like they're not adequately represented? Do they feel they need to be around other dogs who look like them? No, dogs are just dogs, bro. Dogs figured this shit out. Cats figured this shit out. Anyway, if you have a partner of color or children of color, trust and believe that you can still be racist. You're not exempt. If anything, you have even more of a duty to examine your behavior for the benefit of your loved ones. How the fuck would a racist person ever fall in love with and marry someone of color if they hate people of color? How? That's literally impossible. You would never be able to do this. Like, the whole concept is just ridiculous on its face. If you were racist, you would not marry a person of color. You would not love them. You would not care for them. You would hate them. But again, they want to be able to call anyone racist at any moment by criteria that they have appointed themselves to be the exclusive clergy who have the right to determine if you are the witch, you are the heretic. You must listen to black people without exception on what they deem to be racist, no matter how irrational and stupid it is, and that somehow you can still be racist even if you happen to be literally in love with, married to, and having children with a person of color. This is literally like jumping the fucking shark in stupidity. Take your racist family members to task for the shit they say over the dinner table or via social media. Okay, whatever. Confront your colleagues who say racist shit unchecked at work. But don't forget, don't virtue signal too much, because then you're still racist. Like, there's no good way. 59, look around your workplace. Are there only people of color, cleaners or assistants? Or rather, I guess that's all they are. What can you do to change that? The answer is almost never nothing. That's, I guess, kind of an affirmative action ploy or whatever. But, number 60, if someone asks you to fill a role that you think a person of color would be better suited for, recommend a talented person of color who you know and forego the position yourself. Like, just go find someone else to do it. Number 61, don't make us be the de facto diversity guy at work, or at least pay us extra to do the labor of diversifying the workplace. What? Now you deserve extra money just because you happen to be a person of color? Refuse to speak on an all-white panel, regardless of the topic. This would be interesting because they continue to make these situations where there's white places and black places on college campuses. And if they're going to discuss a topic, then they want there to be all white rooms and all black rooms. Whatever. If there are only people of color in your seminar, don't weirdly stare at them when the lecturer poses questions about race and expect them to answer everything. But earlier you said to always listen to people of color. Earlier you said that only people of color are allowed to speak on issues of race. This is why I said that this is an ideology designed to create madness. Because you can't possibly fulfill everything these people are demanding of you. 64. If you're in charge of making curricula, make sure that there is work by people of color, especially women of color, on the reading list, and not just in the weeks dedicated to race. So you need to be sure that everything has black people and, whatever people in as far as the curricula all the time. But during February and during like all these other months, because they come up with new ones all the time, then it needs to be dominated entirely by them. Commission people of color to make work about race. But earlier you just said that we're not supposed to expect them to answer everything race-based, whatever. Commission people of color to make work that has nothing to do with race. It's always just commission us. We need to be the top of the privilege line. Number 67, don't say things like there are two sides to every story or plays devil's advocate when it comes to conversations about race. Me and Paul Rossi, when I did my video with him, talked about this. This is on their pyramid of white supremacy. And this is some rich shit. Because if you were, say, for example, talk about Darrell Brooks driving his car into a parade and murdering 6 people and injuring 40, then people of color would say there's two sides to every story, which is exactly what they said when Black Lives Matter was trying to raise $1 million to bail him out of jail. Now, or play devil's advocate when it comes to conversations about race. Again, obey us. Do not have any independent thought. Obey us. Well, as long as they're not, as long as they're people of color that agree with us, then, anyway. You can't even talk about this stuff at the same time because it's also logically inconsistent. But you're not supposed to say that there are two sides to every story, but that's how they want it to be. Like, say the two sides to every story about Jussie Smollett. Don't judge, Jussie Smollett. There's two sides to every story. Oh, and in those situations, just listen, which means be quiet and accept whatever we tell you without any thought. Number 69, it's never useful to say stuff like, but what about the white working class? Have you thought about non-white working class people's needs? Why is it not useful to talk about that? Well, I'll tell you why. When I was at Occupy, we talked about the whole working class. Then it needed to become only about racism and systemic racism. We couldn't talk about classism anymore. We couldn't talk about class disparities, or we were called class reductionists. And essentially, the only poor that they care about are people of color. And the white poor, which are actually the majority in general, are not important and somehow privileged, even if they're a single mom with 4 kids living in a trailer working as a waitress. Don't vote for racist politicians what the why are you asking that as 4 questions? Anyway, can't believe I need to say this one, but it seems likely possible. Maybe some of y'all did not get this memo. The problem is that what you guys, let me try to read this. Don't vote for racist politicians? Like, what the fuck? Anyway, the problem is that they can determine someone's racist on the drop of a fucking hat. Like, and they do all the time. So I'm not supposed to vote for racist politicians, but they call people racist all the time that are not racist. But don't forget, you're not allowed to ever judge or question their views on what is and is not a racist person or a racist policy or a racist politician. Unless they're Candace Owens. Anyway, research your candidates. Who has progressive policies that won't needlessly criminalize people of color? Vote for them. Remember that black women are not here to save you from yourselves. You got to put in that work too. Do whatever we say, but we're not here to help. Anyway. Number 73, be cognizant of how your whiteness could be weaponized against black people, i.e., white women. Don't play into stereotypes about black men being inherently threatening to you. It gets black men killed. See Emmett Till. So, are we going to bring up crime statistics again? I don't think they're going to want to talk about that. Number 74, use your white privilege to be on the front line between people of color and the police at protests. You're at much less risk than us. This just isn't true. But whatever. Number 75, record police encounters when you see that they're involving black people. This has become like an epidemic problem, and I almost sometimes feel like there are people that are being arrested that are hoping they can become the next millionaire when a GoFundMe gets made for them. Because as we found out with Jacob Blake, you can get arrested because you were at your rape victim's house violating the restraining order your rape victim had against you while resisting arrest with a knife and trying to take off in her car with her kids in it. That you can get shot doing that and then become a millionaire. Anyway, share alerts when ICE is planning a raid. So help illegals stay here. How's that working out? Here's another one that's always going to be fun. Stand up to Islamophobia wherever you see it. But they're finding out real quick that the woke, weird, strange bedfellows thing is not working out. Because when they tried showing genderqueer to children in Dearborn, Michigan, Muslims showed up and said, I don't want you showing homosexual books to our kids. Number 78, if you have ever thought a phrase like Black Lives Matter is too assertive, consider why you're so uncomfortable with black people standing up for our humanity. Well, I'm uncomfortable about it only because it is exactly as Martin Luther King predicted with Black Power, become a gateway to just feeling that only Black lives matter. That's the reason why when they were looking for that girl YouTuber because she was missing, Joy Reid had to make up a bullshit concept called missing white woman syndrome. Like the only reason they care about missing, people is if they're white. Yet, as Ruin Leon pointed out, Joy Reid is not doing special videos about missing black women. So it's not important that they care about themselves. It's only important that we not care about ourselves. Listen when black people say, I'm not comfortable in this situation. You've seen Get Out, haven't you? I actually haven't seen Get Out. But then the question is going to be, why are you uncomfortable in that situation? Are you going into every situation trying to figure out how you should be uncomfortable for racial reasons? I remember when it was a perfect example of Black Lives Matter always making it about themselves. After that massacre in the nightclub, it was a gay nightclub, and they brought up Black Lives Matter person to speak, and she got up, she's like, I was really nervous about coming up here because there's so many white people in the crowd, and I'm not joking, or something like that. And I'm like, did you come up here looking to see the race of everybody that was here and try to figure out how that in some way affected you? I just did a video specifically about this because there was a guy describing his interactions at the gym. You can watch that later if you want. If you haven't seen Get Out, watch Get Out. Understand what that everyday horror is real. Okay, I haven't seen the movie, so I can't comment on it. Number 81, question whether you have double standards when it comes to drugs. Do you think it's cool when white weed entrepreneurs make tons of money, but think that black people who are found to have traces of marijuana in their systems deserve to be thrown in prison? What? Nobody does this. Really, nobody does this. Like, what are they talking about? King Brandon says, what she's saying is, don't vote for politicians who use 2-in-1 shampoo. Yeah, absolutely, bro. A look inside the mind of a toddler. Unfortunately, I am inclined to believe to agree. Winning mindset says, Winning reality says this article is all tactical Maoist doublespeak. Yeah, I would tend to agree that this is all social engineering for sure, and it's not for any good purpose. And here we go. Don't have dreadlocks if you're not black. Just don't. Beyond being offensive, it's just not suited to your hair type. Do literally anything else with your hair. You do not own hairstyles. Period. You do not own fucking hairstyles. Anyway, number 83. Don't refer to things as your spirit animal if you're not native. There are other ways to express affinity with something. Fuck you. I'll refer to anything I want as my spirit animal. Native Americans are not the only culture that had spirit animals. Celtic mythology had spirit animals as well. Number 84. Do not compare the exploitation of animals to racism ever. I'm deadly serious. What are you going to do? Kill us? If I ever meet this person, I'm going to compare exploitation of animals to racism literally every moment. But I don't think that I would otherwise ever be compelled to say something like this. Like, who are these people they're talking about? I can't believe I even need to say this in 2018, but don't wear blackface. Nobody really does this anymore. But what are you talking about? Don't even think about saying the N-word, even if you're alone, even if you're listening to rap, even if you're alone and listening to rap. This weird thing that they want to create another black privilege where it's okay for black people to use the N-word, but literally no one else, under this concept that they're somehow trying to reclaim it. You know, it's just like groomer. They're trying to reclaim groomer too. You know, but anyway, why is it okay for some races to say an evil racist slur and not others? I don't use any of them for any of the races. I don't say any of these words because I think they're all bad. But don't forget, they want to have the right to say cracker or, you know, honky or whatever other racial slur that they have, because remember, they've rewritten the rules to make it so that they can't possibly be racist even when they're engaging in obvious racist behavior. Anyway, similarly, don't use the word gypsy, pookie, or redskin or any other racial slur, even if you're repeating what someone else said or reading from a text. But again, they want to be able to say the N-word whenever they want. This is an example of black privilege. They are trying to create a circumstance in which black people have a special privilege to use this stupid word. I could really go my whole life without ever hearing this word again, and it would be too soon. But they say it constantly. Now, here's another really great one. That includes the word colored, person of color, and colored. They are not the same. Trust me. So you can call them person of color, but you can't call them colored. You know, and the reason why I've actually done a video about this because Mercedes Lackey, the author, got canceled because she used the term colored while complimenting someone. I wish I was making this up. But the example that I gave in that video was that even the NAACP uses this word. You know, like, let me see if I can find the crest so you guys can look at it. I'll pull it up on the, up here for you guys to look at. But again, they say do not use the term colored, the word colored, but it's literally an association for colored people. Let me just pull this up real quick. Let me find it. Seal. There we go. So share my screen again because this is hilarious to me. Using the word colored is racist, always apparently, and Mercedes Lackey gets kicked out of this convention because she dared to use the term when she was saying that there was this really great colored author. So it was literally a compliment, right? So here we have it on Wikipedia. I'm going to pull it up, but it's literally called the Association for the Advancement of Colored People. So it's always racist to use the word colored unless you're the NAACP. But, I guess maybe I shouldn't be that, surprised by that, considering the fact that that's how they want all of these rules to work, right? So let me share the screen again. Here we go. Pull up the Wikipedia article. Here we go. Again, National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. So according to her ridiculous logic, the NAACP is racist. It's just, how do you do this? You know, National Association for the Advancement of Colored People is apparently racist. Colored was just what they called colored people at the time. People of color were colored people. Why is it racist to say colored people, but not to say people of color? These are kinds of examples of brain rot that I was talking about earlier, where you find yourself just going, what makes you sit around and think this shit up? Now, I'm sure that there were racist people who referred to them as colored, but there were also abolitionists who referred to them as colored. There were also people who literally fought in the Civil War to liberate them who would have referred to them as colored. It's just whatever. Anyway, this is like exhausting. Understand that America has what it has because it stole land from indigenous people and stole people from Africa. So there's a really interesting clip of a movie that I shared once where this famous general, and I'm going to forget his name, sits down with Sitting Bull, meaning the Native American general, and they have an argument. And he says, basically, what would you have us do? He's like, we'll take your people out of our lands. And the white general says, what exactly are your lands? And he's like, well, these lands were given to us by our God. And he's like, well, that's wonderful. You can cloak your bullshit in spiritualism. And then he goes off to list the history of the Lakota Sioux, which was that they began in Minnesota. They were driven out of Minnesota, not by white people, but by other tribes. And he listed off the tribes. So then they moved to the Midwest, purchased firearms, and conquered the Midwest, driving out other Native American tribes. So like even if you wanted to do a land back movement, who do you give it back to? Does that mean the Sioux get Minnesota, or does that mean the Sioux get the Midwest? Because they believe their God gave them the land in the Midwest. And that's just one example of many. Conquering went on all over the place before any white people got here, despite the contradictions in critical race theory where they claim that imperialism was apparently only done by white people. But there's no way to do this. And then when you talk about people that they stole from Africa, remember, we have to have a complete knowledge of history. How did people get into the slave trade? How did they become slaves? Black African kings engaged in genocidal, brutal wars on their neighbors and enslaved people and sold them into the Atlantic slave trade. But that piece of the history is not relevant to them. Or if it is, then they try to rewrite it as, well, we were nice to our slaves. Our slavery was different. We treated our slaves better, so that's why it was okay, at least according to them. 90, care about race on the 364 days that aren't Martin Luther King Day. Okay, right. We have a whole month called Black History Month. You guys have Juneteenth or whatever other weird holidays you've invented. Anyway, also don't whitewash his legacy and use it to argue that black people should just take what they're being given lying down. Nobody has made that argument. That's bullshit. Nobody's made that argument. People have said engage in effective activism. Martin Luther King was effective. The violent riots of Black Lives Matter were not effective. They did nothing. The Black Lives Matter support went from 73% to 32% because of the rioting. That's why Martin Luther King opposed rioting. Period. It's not about taking while lying down. It's that if you want people to stop profiling you as violent criminals, don't behave like violent criminals. Don't play into the hands of actual racists by behaving exactly like the stereotypes that you don't want to be associated with. Number 92. Think about how race is operating even when people of color aren't around. Be cognizant of it wherever you are, whichever situation you're in. People of color have to, so should you. So you literally have to be thinking about race absolutely every moment. This makes race the most defining factor of all things. And it's just not. We were doing so much better when we were making race irrelevant. If you go through life doing this, this is how is this how you end up with the 3 mass shooters we've had recently who were motivated by this, including white people who were motivated by this, meaning white people who went to go kill white people because they hated white people? Nah, of course not. That's wrong. The only rhetoric from the right is ever dangerous. Anyway. Remember that your queerness, womanhood, transness, class background, disability doesn't exclude you from white privilege. My class background absolutely fucking disqualifies me from white privilege. I still live in a trailer. I'm still extremely poor. I still can only buy used cars. There's no special treatment that I'm getting from being white. It's just bullshit. But you remember earlier she said that intersectionality was absolutely important, right? But at the end of the day, they want the black issue to be the issue. Everything else is subordinate to that. That's how you end up with, for example, we have to have a Me Too movement and we have to fight rape culture until a black man gets shot by cops, again, while violating a restraining order that his rape victim had against him while trying to leave, while trying to leave with her kids. Then the women's issues is subordinate to the black issues. So if you happen to be a black male rapist resisting arrest with a knife, you have more rights and more priority than the woman that he raped. 94. Make your feminism useful to all women rather than calling yourself an intersectional feminist. Show, don't tell. Okay. Number 95. Don't assume, full stop, that you can understand what it's like to experience racism. You can't. That's the whole point. So again, we make it this mystical force that only they have the inherent ability to identify or ever experience. Even if I experienced, because I did, violence at the hands of black racists, because the Nation of Islam actually had a presence where I went to school, I apparently did not experience racism, despite being targeted violently and hospitalized by black kids I had never met who were attacking me because I was white. It is impossible for me to experience racism. And I should just listen to black people infallibly and without question if they say that, unless they're Candace Owens. Number 96, understand that nothing in your life has been untouched by your whiteness. Everything you have would have been harder to come by if you had not been born white. No, I'm just not buying it. Number 97, be grateful for the lesson when you're called out on racism. Getting defensive won't help. We're supposed to thank them when they make up lies that we're racist. Move past your white guilt. Guilt is an unproductive emotion. Don't sit there mired in woe. Just be better. So how are you supposed to be constantly cognitive of your white privilege, but not have white guilt? Again, this is an ideology based in trying to create madness in the people who would practice it. It doesn't surprise me that people get involved in this as white people and then find themselves going on mass shooting sprees to kill white people for being white people. Number 99, recognizing that fighting racism isn't about you. It's not about your feelings. It's about liberating people of color from a world that tries to crush us at every turn. Crush us at every turn. We are the worst possible, crushing at every turn society that we've ever had. And anyway, number 100, and I can't believe I finally got through all of this. And remember, being an ally is a verb, not a noun. You can't just magically be an ally to people of color because you say you're one. It's something you must continually work on. And you're never, ever going to be done. It's never going to be satisfactory. Because again, as I pointed out, so many of these things just leave space for people who happen to be white. There's no acceptable way to be white to them. That's why if you post a poster that says it's okay to be white, then they investigate they investigate the campus for hate crimes. There is no way to be okay to be white to them. There's no way to, what is the solution? They have to exterminate white people. That's really the inevitable conclusion. There really is no other way to take this. Super chat from friend of the show, Logical Checkmate. About the word gypsy, me. Hey, apparently gypsy is a racial slur now. Friend who is Roma. LOL. Only activists say that. They are outraged on our behalf. That's about all they do for us. Yeah, he's right. This whole gypsy thing was just so stupid. You know. Daisy Williams says, me and V Radio will eat Bologna sandwich in our future. Sweetheart, are you going to make me a sandwich? A Bologna sandwich? I know you meant bologna, but Bologna, I had to say Bologna because it's one of those words that's not really a word. Let's go and throw the chat overlay back up. I'm going to go ahead and look through the chat here. The riots in Kenosha were scary. I live here and was a few blocks from Rittenhouse that day. They were trying to burn down the dinosaur museum at the time. Yeah, I remember seeing videos of that. I'm sure that dinosaur museum was definitely oppressing them. There's actually a video of a black guy trying to stop them because he takes his kids to that museum. Remember, these people are the same people who believe that stop white hate is hate speech. Yeah, I know. We're not supposed to in any way discourage that behavior, apparently. You know. But no way. Broken Baker says, how do people write lists like this? And where can I buy what they are smoking? Not only that, you can get paid to write for Vice. You know, what's up, B? Yo, Jordan Snowden. What's up? Matthew Dwayne says, Africans sold other Africans too. It was and still is a terrible practice perpetuated by all peoples. You know, that's a funny thing. I think actually I'll throw up my video about this topic because it's actually kind of astonishing how slavery came about. And like also interesting to look at the facts of which cultures ended it before others. That was why that Woman King movie was such a problem for them, was because the Woman King was part of an empire that literally made their fortunes on slavery. And they literally made all their money doing it. And then they fought a war to protect their right to continue to do it. And the British Navy and military had to actually come stop them. So it's crazy to me that, again, they think that this is just some kind of white institution. So let me go ahead and pull this up and I'll watch this with you guys real quick. And then I'm going to have to get ready to go here. I hope that you guys have enjoyed this stream. And again, I'm sorry if I sound a little burned out. It's because I am. And it has nothing to do with you guys. There's just crazy shit going on in my life. I do think that my life would improve a lot if Daisy Girl would come make me a Bologna sandwich, though. That would make me very happy. I used to just eat bologna and mustard. That was my favorite sandwich when I was a little kid. I just squirt a little bologna on the bread and then, squirt some bologna. I would squirt mustard on the bread. So anyway, let's watch this video about the truth about slavery. And this was me debunking the Everything's Gonna Be All White movie, which was incredibly cringe. And I didn't even get to the end of it because I couldn't bring myself to do it anymore. Here we go.
Hello, everybody. Once again, we are going to venture into Everything's Gonna Be All White. In this episode, part 2 of my series, I will be discussing this documentary's whitewashing of slavery. The spirit of what was going on in the clips, and some of which I can play because one of them was in the trailer, is to suggest in some way that slavery itself was a white institution, or was created by white people, and that therefore white people collectively should feel some sort of remorse or responsibility, or should be held responsible for slavery itself. And in this episode, I'm going to get into not only the ridiculous narrative that they're crafting, but also destroying it.
Should white people today feel any responsibility for slavery? Hell yeah.
So that's a clip taken from the trailer. I'm going to get into more as far as to what the content of this documentary, if you could call it that, basically it weaves as a narrative about slavery. But I also want to make it clear that this issue of whitewashing slavery is not unique just to this presentation on Showtime. The whitewashing of slavery is basically ongoing theme when it comes particularly to dealing with, say, the 1619 Project or critical race theory. Remember, they want to tell a more complete version of history, and of course, it all has to center on the Atlantic slave trade. But if we're really going to do that, maybe we should actually take a closer look on how most of the Africans got into the basically the Atlantic slave trade to begin with. And first, I want to play a little clip of another documentary that actually gave an honest assessment of how it happens.
We can only begin to imagine the sheer horror of the slave trade. But what if we could place an actual ancestor within that story? We were able to do just that for one of Tom Joyner's ancestors, his third great-grandfather, Tony Dumas. Can you read where it lists Tony Dumas' birthplace? In the far right.
Place of birth, Africa.
Africa. Your great-great-great-grandfather, Tony Dumas, was born in Africa around 1790. We tracked down a direct male descendant of Tony's, a distant cousin of yours, and we asked him to take a DNA test to see where Tony was born. So if we found a match, that's where the brother came from. Would you mind turning the page of the scrapbook? This could mean your great-great-great-grandfather was a member of the Balanta people from the country of Guinea-Bissau.
On the coast.
On the coast. And it's an exact match. Yep.
How do you think he was captured?
Probably through a war. You know, there were African middlemen, and they would fight wars with other Africans to enslave them to sell to the white man. Slavery was a huge business for different African kingdoms. You know the story that we got when we were kids, that your ancestor was out on one Sunday with his girlfriend and some white man jumps out of the bush and throws a net over him? It's not how it happened. Slavery was big business. Africans sold other Africans to the Europeans.
Now, debunking the myth that supposedly Europeans just showed up in Africa and randomly abducted people, and that that's how the Atlantic slave trade worked, is important, but it's not the only issue we need to discuss when it comes to whitewashing slavery. Yes, one of the major points that is brought up constantly by the critical race theory types, the 1619 types, is that, again, we're not telling a complete version of history. So they would tell a version that just kind of leaves out the truth, which is that it wasn't a white industry. It was an industry practiced by people all over the world. But that doesn't fit with the demonization of quote-unquote whiteness that they're pushing for. So instead, we're just going to gloss over the fact that the people who were sold into the Atlantic slave trade were sold by other black people, African kings who were generally engaged in imperialism, genocide, etc. And I have heard the twist that, oh, well, that's different. You see, we were nicer to our slaves in Africa, and the African kings didn't know about the horrible treatment that the slaves they would be selling to these Europeans would get. And that's just crap. I'm sorry. It's okay. We have nicer slavery here. No, I'm sorry. I'm not buying it. That's bullshit. But again, it wasn't a white industry. Slavery was big business all over the world. Now let's discuss, first of all, the origins of slavery itself, since the narrative that is being weaved is to suggest that somehow slavery was invented by white people. Now, according to this website, Slavery in History, that seems to have the people who made it did an excellent job of sourcing everything. The first recorded slaves were in 6800 BC, and it happened in Mesopotamia. Now, where's Mesopotamia? Well, that would be the Middle East. So in other words, Arabs invented slavery, not white people, not Asian people, but apparently it was Arabs. Now, the only reason this is important, because first of all, I again think that blaming an entire race for anything is ridiculous is that if there was, in fact, an inventor of slavery, it wasn't the dreaded white people. It happened to be Arabic people. And every race on the planet at one point or another engaged in slavery. So the only reason this is relevant is not to help them demonize someone else. I'm not demonizing all Arabic people for inventing this concept, but it doesn't change the fact that the narrative that they would like to share with you would be to suggest that somehow slavery itself is a white thing and that all white people are therefore responsible for it and should pay reparations for it. And that's just not logical. Now, building on that, since we've discussed the origins of slavery as far as to where and to when, we can also discuss who abolished it first. And the Arabic countries happen to be one of the worst in this particular category. And as many of the people who are studying modern slavery will tell you, it's still going on in a lot of these places, including in Africa, which we'll get into in a moment. But Turkey abolished slavery in 1933, Iraq in 1933, Iran in 1928, Saudi Arabia in 1962, and Egypt in 1904. I'm focusing mostly on the bigger countries at this point, but you get the idea. This is when these countries finally got rid of slavery, and some of those numbers are pretty damn late. So not only did they create it, they essentially perpetuated it longer than just about any culture on the earth. But definitely dominant as far as like countries that were the slowest to abolish slavery is Africa itself. You can see on here, and I'm not going to read them all off, but there's definitely a pattern that the African countries were some of the last, some as late as 1981. And it's still going on here. It's just not legal, but it still goes on. And it's not all perpetuated by the evil white man that lives there. In many cases, it's still enforced by the people who live there, who are predominantly people of color. So again, if slavery was this horrible atrocity that was only practiced by white people, well, that's obviously just not true. It's not true in any way. So why is it that we constantly have to perpetuate this lie? And it's because of the fact that slavery is like the original sin to their religion. That, all white people should be held accountable for this, as if it was white people's invention, as if white people perpetuated it. And as if you remember from my video where I played that video from The Root with the Rutgers professor who basically just lied and said that critical race theory is about having an honest, unfiltered version of history, she would tell you, and she did in that video, that supposedly people of color were traveling the oceans and peacefully trading with each other before white people showed up, and that black people never engaged in this sort of thing. I'll link that video in the description. But again, if this is the issue, it's the issue of like who abolished slavery. Well, Africa was pretty damn late to the party. But again, I promise I will get to the white people, but first let's look at the Asian people, since they're also represented in that film as being the oppressed class that is just constantly being put down by the white people. China didn't abolish slavery until 1910, Japan until 1945, and the caveat here is that they had abolished like general slavery before that, but they had kept it legal to have comfort women, which were basically functionally property sex slaves. And that wasn't abolished until 1945. The Mongols in Mongolia didn't until 1957. And in Korea, slavery wasn't abolished until 1930. So again, this is supposedly a white industry perpetuated by whites, created by whites, and that's just bullshit. So now I pick some of the major European countries that were known for imperialism and slavery, and, well, the reality is this. The European countries, by and large, with some exceptions, abolished slavery faster than anybody else. The very first country to abolish slavery was Haiti, and hats off to them. But these numbers are a hell of a lot better than Asia or Africa. We have the USA at 1865, the United Kingdom 1833, Germany 1807, France 1848, Spain 1811, Russia 1906, that's Portugal 1836, and Canada at 1834. Now, one of the people that they brought on to discuss this, basically in the ongoing theme of every race ganging up on white people that goes on in this show quite a bit, they also brought on this guy. And one of the things that he shared was a story of an indigenous person who was just astonished at the notion that, that George Washington owned like 300 slaves. Like it was just such a horrible abomination. How could that ever be possible? And the theme again is that to indigenous people, the notion of slavery was just this crazy idea. So again, they have to perpetuate the idea that slavery was just a white people thing. And they also tend to want to only focus on the Atlantic slave trade. They always want to talk about just the United States. But the reason why they do that is because if they had to take in the concept of slavery in its totality, it would not fit the narrative. And they'd have to take a little, look at themselves and their own culture's roles in slavery. But okay, since you want to focus on the Atlantic slave trade and what happened in the colonies, it just so happens that, as this person points out in their article here, Ryan Smith, how Native American slaveholders complicate the Trail of Tears narrative. And in this, he goes on to detail that, in fact, particularly people of the Cherokee Nation owned slaves and kept the slaves and took the slaves with them on the Trail of Tears. So this all kind of shatters the notion that this was, again, just some kind of white American thing that was only done by white Americans to black people who were brought to America. And it's just a lie. It's just not true. Let's go ahead and read a little bit of this. When you think of the Trail of Tears, you likely imagine a long procession of suffering Cherokee Indians forced westward by a villainous Andrew Jackson. Perhaps you envision unscrupulous white slaveholders whose interest in growing a plantation economy underlay the decision to expel the Cherokee, flooding in to take their place east of the Mississippi River. What you probably don't picture are Cherokee slaveholders, foremost among them Cherokee Chief John Ross. What you probably don't picture are the numerous African American slaves Cherokee owned who made the brutal march themselves, or else were shipped en masse to what is now Oklahoma aboard cramped boats by their wealthy Indian masters. And what you may not know is that the federal policy of Indian removal, which ranged far beyond the Trail of Tears and the Cherokee, was not simply the vindictive scheme of Andrew Jackson, but rather a popularly endorsed, congressionally sanctioned campaign spanning the administrations of 9 separate presidents. Remember, we have to tell the whole story, guys. We can't leave out any little details like the fact that, oh, wait a second, you mean the indigenous people were holding slaves even, in the Atlantic slave trade? What was the term for that again? Oh, yeah, man, right in the narrative. So was it just the Cherokee? Nope, if that's what you think, you'd be wrong. In this book by Barbara Crathamer, Black Slaves, Indian Masters, they detail that the Choctaw and Chickasaw Indians bought, sold, and owned Africans and African Americans as slaves, a fact that persisted after the tribe's removal from the Deep South to Indian Territory. So it's not just the Cherokee. And this just kind of, again, comes back to the point that this was not just a white thing, guys. This is just something humans, unfortunately, have done to each other for hundreds of thousands of years. Another article that I'll share in the description of this video discusses East Africa's forgotten slave trade and how over several centuries, countless East Africans were sold as slaves by Muslim Arabs to the Middle East and other places via the Sahara Desert and Indian Ocean. Experts say it's time for this to be discussed more openly. And again, this points to the Arabic origins of slavery. And again, I don't feel that all Arabs are responsible for that at all. In fact, they're, unless they're currently enslaving people, which is still taking place in some Arabic countries, they're not responsible. And we need to get over this idea that we can hold an entire, race of people because of their common skin pigment accountable for things done by, other people that they have nothing to do with, that they're not related to, crimes that were committed by people that are not you. That's kind of the whole essence, again, of of racism, is that the idea that the Ku Klux Klan wants to be able to hold all black people accountable for the FBI crime statistics. It's wrong, but it's just as wrong to try to suggest that somehow all white people are accountable for slavery. And it's just not true. In fact, nobody who is white in the United States right now had anything to do with slavery. So the notion that we should in some way feel responsible for it, again, you cannot, there's collective guilt is logically fallacious. It makes no sense. But That's the narrative that they want to craft. That supposedly this is a white thing, only white people do this, and therefore only white people should be held accountable for it. And again, it's just bullshit. And as this article points out, slavery's last stronghold is in a country named Mauritania, provided that I said that correctly. But slavery is still a problem in this country. And again, it's black people enslaving black people. There's no Europeans to blame this on. This is going on over there right now. So I hope that people will take a longer look at the history, but not just the history, but what's currently going on to perpetuate slavery. Slavery is horrible. It's one of the most atrocious things that we have ever done to each other as humans. But note I said humans. I didn't say white humans, black humans, red humans, yellow humans, what the fuck ever. We're all humans. That's really, really what they don't want us to realize. That we are one people, one species on this earth. They want us divided so that they can conquer us. I'm not playing the game. I don't make my skin pigment the center of my identity. It's just a descriptive, adjective of the way I appear. It has no other purpose to me. Thanks again for tuning in, guys. Please like, subscribe, ring the bell. You can visit my website, v-radio.us, where you can find all of the rest of my mediums that I upload stuff, Odyssey, Rumble.
Well, guys, that's what I got for you today. I will be making more content. If there's anything you want me to stream about, then just let me know. I know that I'm still engaged in these arguments in regards to the definition of the word racism, because people still haven't accepted that racism is a belief and that anybody can hold a belief, and that they therefore, whether or not they have any power has nothing to do with it. The argument I typically make is that, well, if what they are suggesting, which is that somebody is not racist until they have systemic power, then that means that the Nazis were not racist until Hitler became president, because Hitler wrote Mein Kampf from a jail cell. The Nazi Party initially had no power. And that's kind of the danger. If you're not allowed to call it racism until it's systemic, then the Nazis are not racist. The funny thing is, when you ask them that, they'll usually, well, no, the Nazis were always racist. Like, how are they racist without power, right? Anyway, I said that just because I'm still engaged in a active Facebook argument about that. I got a notification about it. But I hope you guys enjoyed today. Make sure you like, subscribe, check me out at hy.page/vradio. There you can find me on all of my mediums, because I re-upload to everything just for the sake of redundancy, because I imagine my channel will not always be around. I'm sure that eventually they'll get around to deleting me. And I'm still feeling out what's going to happen. We may be interviewing Wendy Rittenhouse again, because she wants to talk about Kyle Rittenhouse's upcoming book. And I guess there's some weirdness going on about that. Johnny Walker Dredd and I will be covering that issue. In addition to that, still working on OK Groomer. Kind of just got to nail that down and just go ahead and put together what I have on it. That one's probably going to have to be a BitChute exclusive, I imagine it, because I'm going to be putting a lot of raw stuff in there. And the thing is people will ask you, why would you ever share those images of child drag queens and all that? Because you keep lying and claiming they don't exist, and that this is the only way to solve it. And then their next reaction is usually to accuse you, well, why do you have those images? You must like those images. No, I have those images specifically because people like you will claim that they don't exist. And it's really the only way to deal with it. So anyway, Daisy girl, when am I going to get my bologna sandwich, girl? I'd love to have me a bologna sandwich. I'm actually pretty hungry right now. I should go eat lunch, because I got to leave to go do some stuff. So thanks again for tuning in, guys. Make sure that you've checked out my other videos. If you did not already hit like on this, let me know. King Brandon says, you have such incredible patience. I hope it's working to convince people. That patience is one of the reasons why I sometimes take a break from my content. Because I have to be in the right mindset to be able to do this kind of work and do it in a way that's articulate and do it in a way that's not emotional, only rational. That requires a lot of discipline. And if I'm not in the right mental mindset, then it's very difficult. Make sure you check out Winning Reality's channel if you haven't, guys. You can he does a lot of great content as well. He's in the chat right now. He's a good supporter of our show. But anyway, as far as that's the reason why sometimes I have to take breaks, because it can just be, it's like, just for example, just getting through that 100 list of bullshit, like, was really tedious. Like, it was just mentally draining. And like you said, you hope it's working to convince people. That is an ongoing struggle, because you realize that so many of these people are, as exactly what Yuri Bezmenov identified, they're immune to facts. Real information doesn't matter to them anymore. That's essentially what we're dealing with right now. If you bring up a link, then they'll laugh and say, well, it's all lies, right? Like, there's no way to convince anybody of anything most of the time. But I do get private messages from people who just don't want to participate in the ongoing argument online, and I can't really blame them. Who say, thank you for your video about this or for about that, because it really helped me understand something, right? And I get those from both the left and the right. It's just that people are so concerned about getting dogpiled that they don't say anything publicly most of the time. I know I have a lot of left-leaning listeners. I've done polls to make sure, but a lot of them don't participate. And I think it's largely because they know what'll happen. They'll get canceled if they ever admit that these are the feelings that they have. So anyway, guys, I'm going to go eat lunch, because sadly, my Daisy girl, she's not here with me to make me a Bologna sandwich. So I'm going to have to go just like settle for something else. The sad life of V Radio. Hello, darkness, my old friend. Yep, that's what it is, I just live in darkness without you, Daisy girl. I need my Bologna sandwiches. I need my Bologna. Yep, I do. If I sing you a song, will you come make me a Bologna sandwich? Like, you see, where would I go with this? All right, here we go. Got a picture of your house. You were standing by the door. It's black and white and faded, and it's looking pretty worn. See the factory where I worked, silhouetted in the back. Memories engraving, and they're really coming back. I don't need to be the king of the world, as long as I'm the hero of this girl who wants to make me a bologna sandwich. Yeah, I was a singer in the 80s, guys. I was in bands. Heaven isn't too far away, closer to it every day. I'd have to warm up if I was going to do that really well, but you get the idea. Yeah. I listened to a lot of 80s stuff. I wrote ballads, man. I used to write ballads. I'd write love songs for chicks. That's how incredibly romantic I was. It was crazy, bro. I remember during the Kyle Rittenhouse trial, I would sing bars of God Bless the USA just to troll people, because supposedly now that's like an evil fascist song, And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I proudly stand up next to you and defend her still today, 'cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. Oh, Daisy, make me a sandwich. Thanks, guys. Everybody take care. And ladies, I'm thinking about making some ASMR content just for the ladies to help you relax can get to sleep late at night, I'll read logical and beautiful poems to you and help you develop your mind as you reach a state of restful sleep. Thanks, guys.